everyone. Welcome to the Breathe With Bri Podcast. I am your host, Bri Rose, and today we have a very special guest. We will be interviewing the cannabis witch. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is 100% a plant medicine friendly podcast, and I hope to explore many other plant medicines with you all. But for this episode, we're exploring cannabis. I thought it would be wonderful to have a conversation about cannabis and ways of cultivating cannabis so we could get the maximum use out of the medicinal purposes. Marijuana is rapidly becoming more and more quote unquote legal in many places. So with anything that is sold and mass produced, it starts to get diluted with a whole bunch of chemicals. And especially if you live in America, I know I never really thought about the chemicals that could possibly be in weed and how consuming it could be affecting me. So I would love for you to stay tuned to my interview with the cannabis witch herself. I am so excited to be able to pick her brain with you all and just get some of her views on cannabis.
Hi everyone, I am the cannabis witch, I guess. I am a farmer. I grow organic and biodynamic cannabis, and I'm a witch. So I then turn that cannabis into tinctures and chocolates and massage oil and all kinds of really good lotions and potions.
Let's talk about some of the harmful chemicals that may be used in weed that's sold today.
So I think to truly understand this, you need to be aware that cannabis is a huge and growing global industry now that most governments have seen the revenue potential of legalizing or decriminalizing it. And unfortunately, that industry is dominated by cannabis, which is grown hydroponically. So this means that these plants are grown in water, which is then pumped full of all kinds of things we'll get onto in a sec, which enables them to yield much more highly and to kind of streamline and quicken the process. Plus, it's logistically easier to grow that way. You're not having to deal with huge amounts of soil, and obviously if you're growing that way, you're growing under lights, not under the sun. So it's a highly artificial controlled environment, which means that you're not at the mercy of the things that old-time farmers, shall we say, have to deal with, like bad weather, too much rain, not enough rain, too much sun, not enough sun, etc., etc. The growing this way also enables growers, actually, I don't think they deserve to be called that, manufacturers maybe, of these plants to pump them full of chemicals which will make them stronger, make the high more intense. But because growing that way is so artificial, the plants are very susceptible to a whole range of issues and diseases. Their roots, remember, are in water, which is not, the plant did not evolve to be grown this way. So various different algae and fungi, etc., in the water can become problematic. So you have to use a lot of chemicals just to keep things stable and sanitary. And of course, that means that the plant then absorbs these chemicals and they become part of what is eventually ingested or smoked. So basically, the way that most cannabis is now grown is in these highly controlled artificial environments, which makes the end product pumped full of chemicals to control the environment, and chemicals which will increase yields, increase the size of the buds. The Dutch pioneered, just for an example, the use of chemicals which had been formulated for the flower industry to make blooms bigger and more beautiful. They realized, oh, well, if we use this in cannabis growing, it's going to make our buds bigger, which it did. What doesn't seem to be concerning anyone is that these chemicals are highly toxic to humans who shouldn't go near them in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, what most people, sadly, most cannabis smokers don't realize is that even though this is a plant, it is a plant which today can be and often is highly manipulated to produce a product that has lost most of its, or a lot of its medicinal benefits, because they're now kind of hidden under layers of chemicals, and certainly doesn't, for me, have the same access to higher realms of consciousness, other dimensions, the things that a lot of cannabis smokers love about the plant at all, or has it in a much more reduced capacity.
If you are anything like me, you care about the products you use and the foods you eat, and you want to limit the amount of chemicals that are in it, because we're becoming more aware that usually those chemicals are also contributing to our mental health issues as well as physical health issues. So if you are a person who enjoys smoking on the daily basis or partaking in any type of THC or CBD products, I would suggest that you start to get curious. So let's take a look into the cannabis witch style of cultivating cannabis.
I mean, I guess I should preface this by saying that, strictly speaking, in the stricter sense of the word, we're not biodynamic largely because we have to grow inside under lights, because we are farmers in a very northerly climate. So that's how it goes. We do grow plants outside in summer, but it's kind of touch and go. And those are grown, yes, completely biodynamically. So I think most people have an awareness now of what organic means. Generally, it does vary from country to country, etc., and body to body, but generally you are growing plants without the use of harmful chemically produced fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, that kind of thing. And there are now, a multitude of different techniques which are used by organic farmers all over the world that show that the use of these chemicals really is absolutely not necessary. A message which is often broadcast by people. We can farm without them, and we can farm successfully without them. Biodynamics takes that a step further. You're not only not using harmful chemicals, you are also doing everything you can to ensure that that plant is being grown in a very healthy, thriving ecosystem. You are, from a witchy perspective, doing everything you can to make sure that that plant is in alignment with the natural energies. And you do that by doing almost everything in accordance to phases of the moon and where the planets are at. There is a biodynamic calendar which divides all days up into fruit, flower, leaf, or earth, or root rather, and you do whatever tasks need to be done, spraying the plants with special herbal preparations, feeding the soil, harvesting, etc., according to which day it is. And by doing so, you're really ensuring that that very strong relationship between the plant and the energies that created that plant, so earth energies, sky energies, are at their most potent, basically. Plants are so incredibly magical for a million different reasons, but one of my favorites is the fact that a plant is literally like the living embodiment of the fusion, the magic that comes from the fusion of earth energy and sky energy. It's drawing its life force and its food from the ground, but it is getting the energy to do that from the sky. So yes, in a proper biodynamic environment, you do everything you can to encourage that relationship and to encourage maximum soil health. We now know that the gut microbiome in humans is hugely influenced by the microbiological life in the soil in which the food people are consuming was grown. And that's one of the problems these days, and one of the reasons behind so many terrible illnesses. The food people are consuming might as well be dog shit, honestly. It's grown in dead soil, it's pumped full of chemicals, and then it is processed to within an inch of its life. So you end up with something with pretty much no real nutritional value, and certainly something that has not a trace of the energies available in it. So that's biodynamic farming in a very small nutshell. I mean, honestly, Google it, everyone. Google it and find out, because it's an amazing way of growing. It does lead, in my opinion, in my previous life, I had a job where I traveled around the world and I visited many biodynamic farms. And on the really good, successful ones, there is a palpable energy. You just feel it. And there are insects buzzing around and there are birds and everything just feels more alive and like there really is an ecosystem going on. It's not a monoculture. They're not just fields and fields of exactly the same crop. There is a thriving, viable, sustainable ecosystem. And in that environment, anything you grow, which is then consumed, is going to have some of that good energy.
So I completely agree. As someone who's had the absolute privilege of visiting the land, there's definitely a completely different energy about it. It seems magical, like the fairy tales, but we were told that fairy tales didn't exist. And I know with my personal experience on the land and with the insects and birds, they really do respond differently to a human who is actually investing in the land and forming that relationship to the land. So I think if you're on your gardening journey, your farming journey, or even with your own houseplants, maybe looking into biodynamic farming is a nice little avenue. Let's talk about cannabis for medical use.
I have been through periods of really, really bad depression, and I never wanted to be on antidepressants. I did try them for a time. They didn't work for me at all. So that wasn't an option. And then when kind of in my early 40s, I hit another period of very bad depression. At that point, I was kind of, well, I was more grown up. I knew, what I had access to and used it consciously to help with that. And it really did. I think cannabis really saved my life at one point. I didn't really know that much about the medical benefits for other conditions and diseases then, but once I started growing my own and meeting people or being told about people who really needed medical cannabis, I mean, honestly, I'm still finding out, someone will come to us with a condition we haven't seen before and ask for some help. And when I look into it, yep, cannabis can help with that too. So I'm still compiling my full list of things it's good for. And I think probably the answer is far more energetic than something that can be medically or scientifically proven. It exists on the energy level. But what we found is that it's not so much the condition, it's the person. Most people do respond incredibly well to cannabis because, of course, we now know since the 90s that we all have an endocannabinoid system in our own bodies. But some people, for whatever reason, it just does not work for. It's just too overwhelming, even in a microdose, or they literally feel almost nothing, even at what for most people would be a high dose. For people who it works for, I mean, everything from, yes, mental health issues, all the way, of course, to serious things like cancer, MS, fibromyalgia, diabetes, a compound called THCV, which is present in some Sativa strains, is proving to be very effective for diabetes. So, yeah, the list is long and it's growing, but whether it's physical or mental, and that's one of the extra magic things about cannabis for me as well, it's a totally holistic plant medicine. The theme that unites the two aspects, physical and mental, and that is one of cannabis's absolute superpowers, is that on top of the other healing work it's doing, its like ultimate mission is to bring the body back to homeostasis. Cannabis loves balance. It wants things to be balanced. We've only had one other patient who decided to go it alone and not go down the medical route. And they treat their tumors through diet and cannabis. And then we have the people who are going the full chemo medical route, but who use cannabis primarily to help them cope with chemo symptoms. But even in those cases, sometimes there is a noticeable shrinkage in tumors, etc., if the dose is high enough. So for the first group, I mean, you need pretty high doses of THC and CBD. It's always a combination of them. There are some cancers that seem to respond better to either just pure CBD, some breast cancers, but generally it's a CBD and THC combination. And I suppose our best success story was someone that found us with stage 4 brain cancer. They were kind of at their wits' end. He had started off trying the chemo route, but that didn't last long because they saw very clearly it wouldn't work for them. But yeah, after I think we did about 3 rounds of treatment for him, and that entailed making very, very strong tinctures, CBD and THC. I made him coconut oil tinctures, so that's just organic coconut oil infused with the herbs. He took very high doses of that of the THC for 2 weeks out of every month, the CBD continually, and after 3 rounds, he had no more tumor. So, I mean, that was truly amazing. And yeah, as I said, rare. For people taking cannabis to deal with chemo symptoms, I mean, we have at the moment a lady going through breast cancer treatment. We have 2 people with lymphoma, and another person with a brain tumor, but less serious at this point. And yeah, I mean, chemo symptoms are horrific. Anyone who's been near to someone going through that will know. Cannabis helps with appetite. It means, I mean, for one of the ladies, she said, it gives me my life back while I'm on chemo. She just doesn't get quite so low. Chemo comes with a lot of depression. So, yeah, the cancer patients are a big part of what we do. But then we have 2 people with multiple sclerosis, and that's a condition which also seems to respond incredibly well to cannabis. It's a very difficult condition because it affects so many different areas of your life. It affects your mobility, your energy levels, your thinking. And yeah, I mean, we have a lady with chronic MS who's finally been able to go back to work thanks to cannabis. She uses it daily now, and she probably will for a while, but it works. She's kind of worked out how to make it work for her. She's back at work. We have another lady who also recently managed to go back to work. She just didn't have the brain space for it before, basically. The brain fog with MS is terrible. And she's now back at work. So I think it just, for people with those kind of conditions, fibromyalgia is similar, and also seems to come with a lot of brain fog. So again, just giving you the space to think calmly and clearly when you have a condition which really fucks you up on that score, and also being able to move in your body with more ease, which both of those conditions, that becomes problematic. Cannabis is literally a lifesaver. Nice. Cannabis applied topically is also great for eczema, but sore, aching muscles, mild sprains, kind of swelling. It's really quite incredible. I'm still finding out the range of stuff that topical application can do. We make a massage oil, which is pure CBD. CBD is much more easily absorbed by the skin. And if you're going to use cannabis that way, it generally is better. I do make a body balm, which people with eczema and arthritis absolutely love. It's great for arthritis as well when applied topically. Obviously, it really helps with the pain in the joints. For the body balm, I use THC and CBD. THC is very rejuvenating for skin. For feminine energy people of the world, cannabis has all my life been a lifesaver on that score. I did not have a good time before my period, during ovulation, when I still had periods. And cannabis helped hugely with physical pain, and again with that brain fog that can come down, the kind of deep, dark brain fog that can come down. And then, of course, going through menopause, honestly, I don't think I would have made it without cannabis. Again, for the brain fog, just for feeling totally disassociated from your own body, which was not something I was used to. I'm a very kind of physical person. I like to move and exercise, so that was a bit of a shock. But cannabis really, there's almost no menopause symptoms that I now suffer from. And that's a range of different herbs. Red maca is incredible, Agnus castor, but cannabis primarily has really helped. So yeah, any ladies who are at that stage, Google it and then buy some as soon as you can. And ladies who are still bleeding once a month, honestly, it can be a godsend. And for sleep as well at that time. I used to get very restless at nights when I was menstruating. But yeah, cannabis will help with that too.
So if you're having any symptoms that you are wondering, could cannabis help? Feel free to comment. Can you tell us more about movement and cannabis?
Who doesn't like to get high and dance, basically? That's one of the most fun things a human body can do. Dancing is always fun. And I think that is true of everyone. The people who think they can't dance or they don't like to dance have generally been traumatized into thinking that at a young age, which is a shame. Because no one born in a human body, I believe, won't, in all things being equal, enjoy just shaking their ass to some music that they love. But for me, the relationship between cannabis and movement does go even deeper than that. I am a big exerciser. I have been for decades. I really love being in my body. And I use cannabis very consciously in that sphere of my life. I find that I don't exercise high all the time. I wouldn't want to, because it's the kind of opening up of another dimension when you do exercise high. That is part of the magic, if that makes sense. If I did it all the time, it would just be how I exercise. It allows me, and I think this is true of a lot of people, especially if they use it consciously for exercise, but it really does allow you to get into layers of your physical body that are just not accessible usually. And once you're in those layers, and finding out about what you can do there, you're able to take some of that knowledge back with you for exercising when you are not high. It's very relaxing physically for most people. And, exercising in a state of tension, I don't think is quite as beneficial. If you're very angry, if you're very stressed and you need to go and get it out, that's great. But you should get it out and then try and kind of move in an energy that is a bit calmer and a bit more kind of healing. And cannabis helps enormously with that. So, yeah, I think movement is one of the absolute essential strands of a healthy life. Really joyous, free movement under the sun and the fresh air, even better. But if that's not possible, just wherever and whenever. And using cannabis in that sphere as a fun thing, obviously, go for it. It's my favorite fun thing. But also, in a more conscious kind of way, with the express purpose of getting deep into your body, really feeling the connection between your mind and your energy in your body. And when you get to that state, being able to consciously call in and make use of earth energy, sky energy you're calling in from a guide or a being or a dimension, the possibilities become endless and endlessly magical. Some of my most profound, magical kind of woo-woo experiences have happened while doing exercise movement, not just dancing around, but actually also dancing around while on cannabis.
How do you feel about cannabis-assisted meditation?
I love cannabis-assisted meditation. I think it's amazing. I don't, it's not the only kind of meditation I do. I think there's great benefit for me in doing just non-assisted meditation, because that's more of a kind of conscious discipline in just getting your mind calm the fuck down. It's easy for me when I've smoked cannabis. I'm there. Whereas if I haven't smoked on bad days, it's a discipline. I love cannabis-assisted meditation, and I do it not as regularly. I don't do that every single day, but I'll do that at least 3 or 4 times a week. And especially if I have a big question, meditation isn't always about a big question, but when you have a situation, if I have a situation I'm trying to deal with, I will have a cannabis-assisted meditation. Often I won't feel like the answer comes to me then, but if it hasn't, then I will try and spend the period after the meditation doing something I love with plants or making something, so I know I'm in the right zone to get the information when it's ready to come to me. And that, for me, is a really powerful way to use cannabis.
Definitely for me as a meditation facilitator and breathwork facilitator, I think cannabis-assisted meditation could be a beautiful option for so many people, especially if you already use cannabis as a means to just chill out and that's the way you usually feel chill. Feel free to throw in some meditation. I know a lot of people might have more stricter opinions about what meditation can be, but I would say always choose the best meditation for you. How do you feel at ease? Maybe your meditation is smoking a joint and going for a walk in the woods. There's so many avenues in which we can explore meditation, and cannabis-assisted meditation has been a beautiful avenue for me to explore my spiritual gifts as well, because I do feel like, especially if I'm smoking some magical stuff, my spiritual gifts kind of awaken in ways. And when I do breath work and I'm high, I feel so many energetic upgrades. If you're ever interested in it, I would suggest that you try it out. Maybe you can tell us about some of your own personal experiences and how long you've been cultivating and all of those things.
So I've been growing cannabis I started in 2011, so that's 12 years. And yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey, but it has been a journey. I always knew I was going to do it organically and biodynamically from the beginning. But there was a lot of learning involved, obviously, because I really knew absolutely nothing. And it was a disgrace because I was so careful. I have been all my adult life about organic food, what I put on my body. I've been rigorous, but I never even stopped to think about cannabis because I guess I fell into the trap most people do. Oh, it's a plant. I mean, how bad can it be? When I already knew that vegetables were grown with God knows what. So yes, that was very fast asleep of me. But I mean, it was like a light bulb. When I decided I was going to start growing my own cannabis, it just suddenly dawned on me, well, hold on, wait, how is it grown and where is it grown? Which is when I started to find out about hydroponic growing and chemicals and all kinds of things. It was very difficult to find information then, or good information online. It's much easier now. I made many very bad mistakes believing some dude on a forum. I live in a country where prohibition is in full force, so even that wasn't easy. And yeah, I mean, mainly I think because I already knew quite a lot in theory about biodynamic, I'd never tried to grow anything biodynamically myself. Yeah, I just started trying to incorporate as many of the principles of that as possible. Actually, from the beginning, it worked really well in terms of the product. But yeah, it took a while to kind of absolutely perfect and get even better at exactly what to feed them. They're now on a totally biodynamic diet that we make all the food ourselves. But from the beginning, it was always very clean, which the minute I tried it kind of changed everything because it was like nothing I'd ever smoked before. So that made me determined to carry on no matter what. I was 15 or 16 when I first smoked cannabis, which is probably around average. I don't know if that's considered young, but
probably about 15.
Yes, I think that sounds about right. That was in South Africa where I grew up. And it was, it was so strong. I had literally like a hallucinatory experience. It wasn't great. I was very freaked out. We smoked it in the middle of a strawberry field on a farm kind of near where I lived at the time. And yeah, it didn't end well. I remember we ended up running away in terror because we thought dogs were coming. There were no dogs. And then I went home and ate a whole cheesecake and threw up. So yeah, I didn't try it again for at least a year after that because it wasn't fun. And then it wasn't until I got to university I gave up on going to lectures and just hung out and smoked loads of weed with a bunch of guys studying something financial. And I believe they all went on to make lots of money and be successful. So, fuck the myth of cannabis smokers never get anywhere. Yeah.
I know when I was in college and I was feeling super insecure and also just had all of the shame propaganda that comes along with smoking weed, it made my experience really horrible. Like I felt super paranoid, super sensitive. I felt like people hated me and like I could read their hateful thoughts and just felt super awkward. Sometimes I feel like now that I look back on it, I feel like I didn't have a tolerance. I would go and smoke with people who had a way higher tolerance than me, and they were probably smoking some very dank indica. And so I would just freeze and I would just sit still and be zoned out for like 3 hours. And that's honestly not the type of experience that I am suggesting for you all.
So after the experience at university, I left South Africa. I guess my relationship for a long time with cannabis was social, but whenever I had access to it, I would always, and this was something I did for literally 2 decades, when I had free time, I would use it by smoking a joint and then going on a really long walk. And I was very aware of how important that was for my mental health. I ran a very challenging business for 8 years. It was incredibly stressful. And I know for a fact that those cannabis-assisted walks, I had started growing already before the kind of urgent mental health need came up. But that just meant that then I was able to start to use it, to intentionally try and use it more mindfully for my mental health. So that's when I started experimenting with edibles. It was very basic. I mean, when I look back now, it was super basic, but it worked. I made like muffins and stuff, and I didn't even really know about decarboxylation or anything. So I would just grind up the cannabis and just like literally stick it in the dough. They didn't taste very nice, but they worked. And yeah, I mean, I can very safely say that it was plant medicine, cannabis and iboga that got me through that mental health crisis, which really could have been the end. It was that bad. And if I hadn't had cannabis, yeah, I'm not sure how that would have turned out. But there was a period during that where I was a daily user and literally wake up and smoke and keep smoking all day. And I was very aware during that period, this is not really how I want to live for the rest of my life. But I really needed to do that at that stage. I mean, the craziness that was going on was so off the charts. It just felt like the only way to get through it. And I don't regret it because I did get through it. And I think I got through it in better shape than I would have done if I just tried to kind of bare knuckle it. And for me, and you know, I do say this with the full awareness that cannabis addiction is a thing. People who think you can't get addicted to cannabis, I'm sorry, but that is really not true. You can totally get addicted to cannabis. I know. I have been very close to several cannabis addicts, literally. So, you know, I say this with reservation. This is how it worked for me. Just be aware if you have a tendency towards addiction before trying this. But there's, I think it was probably 9 months where I was waking and baking every single day. When I was through the worst of it, and I knew I was through the worst of it, it was easy to stop. You know, it was literally just, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. And then I stopped. And it was maybe 3-4 days of very weird sleep while my body readjusted to that. But then it was okay. Bear in mind, I am pretty clean living. So that would have made the kind of detox period much easier for me.
I know a lot of people have very different relationships with cannabis, especially if you do have a tendency towards addiction. But do you have any suggestions for people who are looking to take tolerance breaks, the best practices within that? How could you possibly restart a more intentional relationship with cannabis?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, tolerance breaks are amazing. I recommend them to everyone who likes to smoke cannabis. And I try and take them 2 or 3 times a year myself. It depends, anything from a week to 4 weeks, whatever I feel my body needs at the time. As to how to do this, I think it depends very much on individual physiology and personality type. Kind of white knuckling it is fine for some people. And yeah, it's a plant, but if it's something your body's used to, you're still going to feel it in your body when you don't have access to that anymore. And to just, you know, remind everyone, cheerlead for biodynamic and organic again. If you're detoxing from organic or biodynamic cannabis, you're going to have a much easier ride than if you're detoxing from something grown with a lot of chemicals. Just putting that out there. Can either bare knuckle it, and then you will probably have anything from 3 days if you're lucky to a week if you're not, of bad sleep. You may find you're a bit cranky, and just that kind of, uneasy, restless feeling you can sometimes get when your body is detoxing from something. But it really won't be. It's not like giving up tobacco, which anyone who's had to go through that will know is truly hell. It's honestly not, it's not that level. Or you can titrate down. So just cut down until you're on what for you is a very low amount, and then stop. I find edibles are hugely useful. We make these coconut oil infusions, and for me, taking a low dose of those when I decide to have a tolerance break for a few days and not smoke and then stop everything is a good way of doing it. It just means it isn't quite such a kind of shock to the system. I would say, yes, tolerance breaks are really important and a really good idea. And when you're ready to come back to it, small things, just take a minute, say thank you for what you're about to ingest, however you like to smoke your cannabis or ingest your cannabis, especially if it has been grown with respect to the energies and entities that helped to make that crop possible. By acknowledging all of that, you're opening up the door to experience whatever those energies and entities intended for you to ideally experience. I really believe that. It also means just kind of making it slightly ritualistic, not just the rolling of the joint or the filling of the bowl or however you do it, but taking that time to almost do a mini meditation, I find really helps me actually smoke less, because, when you smoke in a hurry or like, oh, I'm really stressed, let me just roll this and smoke it, a lot of the good stuff is just taken up with calming you down from that, not bringing in helpful stuff. For me, consuming it more intentionally, so thank you, fairies, or whoever you like to thank. Thank you, cannabis plant, for this amazing medicine. I would really like this to help me feel joyful and clean the kitchen. And by the way, I don't know how anyone manages to do housework without cannabis. It's how is that possible? Be very specific about, okay, so now I want this kind of experience. I'm not saying that's what you'll always get, because I believe the plant gives you what you need, not what you want. But as part of the ritual, you can give some direction. And, if everything's in alignment, that is what you'll get.
Like I said, I did use it in college and didn't have a great experience with it. But what I've typically used it for is transitional periods in my life. There would be periods where I didn't want to drink because I knew I needed to focus on getting clarity in my life, but I still needed to kind of just take a step back from my problems. So I used to smoke weed as a means of chilling the heck out. As I've become an adult and ventured into parenthood and all that has came with that, my desire to smoke weed has increased, and it's been so fucking helpful for me to just chill out during times when toddlers are being toddlers. Also, what was pretty big for me is just reducing or deprogramming myself around the shame aspect of smoking weed. When I was growing up, I was told you're lazy, you're stupid, you know what I'm saying? Only bad people smoke weed, or it's just a very bad thing to do. And the legal thing is alcohol, right? I've had the wonderful opportunity to smoke some biodynamic weed, and it makes the hugest difference. I don't even think I could really just it's just the biggest difference. Smoking it doesn't numb my mind. My mind is very stimulated and creative, and I remember everything. And it's been such a completely different experience, even with the edibles as well. So I just wanted to let people know that if you're thinking about maybe having another go around with it, because in the times that we're in, how can you possibly be sober? It's just what do you want, Yeah. So do you have any suggestions for people who are completely new to this and this is their first time getting into cannabis?
Well, I mean, obviously, I guess I'm going to say be very, very careful about where you source it from. I honestly, please try not to have your first experience with it with something grown with a lot of chemicals. It's a completely different experience, and you are far more likely to have a truly horrific time. So, yeah. And certainly in America, I mean, you can definitely find organic. Biodynamic, I know there are growers in California. I don't know about elsewhere, but you can find organic dispensaries. So start there, start small, take the lowest possible dose or smoke the weakest possible joint or however you imbibe. And I mean, be quite kind of geeky about it. There are so many different types of cannabis. You have different cannabis genetics. You have different terpenes present in different strains. And all of that means you get very, very different effects. People tend to think that being high from cannabis it's a cannabis high. No, there are a variety of types of high, and which, not all of them work for everyone. So I think if you really want to try and incorporate this plant into your life, which I think is a fantastic idea, then do your own research. Just generally, we live in a world now where the more you entrust how your body works and what your body needs to authority outside of yourself, the more you're going to get fucked. You need to do your own research. You need to take responsibility for your own health and your own well-being. Unfortunately, that is the case. But yeah, there are a lot of different types of cannabis out there. The two main genetic strains that are really mainly for smoking, hemp is part of the cannabis family, but that if you smoke flowers from a hemp plant, you're going to have to smoke a lot to get even slightly high. So the two strains, or the two genetic groups grown mainly for their psychoactive properties, are sativa and indica. Now, the genetics of these two different divisions of the family are almost identical. But there are many things on this planet which genetically are almost identical, but in how they move through the world, they are really quite different. Indica plants originated probably from the Hindu Kush area, Pakistan, Afghanistan border, whereas sativa probably originated in Africa. They look quite different in their pure form. So if you grow a strain which is what we call landrace, so that means it's an original strain. It was bred by Gaia in the wild over thousands of years. And these are always my favorite strains to grow. I find them the most balanced. I find them the most spiritual. Things like Afghan Kush, for example, from a typically 100% indica strain, and Malawi Gold, shall we say, from Southern Africa, which is 100% sativa. These plants will look very different, and a pure indica landrace high is absolutely more of a body high. It's more relaxing. It is, definitely more kind of sedating. Although your mind can still be quite active, your body will feel very kind of chill and relaxed. And you probably won't feel like doing anything super physically active, whereas sativa is completely the opposite. And again, I'm talking about a landrace, 100% sativa in its purest form. What has complicated the issue these days is the fact that almost everything available commercially is what is known as a hybrid. So these are plants that were bred. I mean, it was really in the 1960s that humans started to try and breed cannabis plants for strength, for highest possible THC levels, really. But yes, hybrids are crosses between indica and sativa. And I mean, this varies anything from 10% indica, 90% sativa, that kind of ratio to a 50-50 ratio. Plus, you have to bear in mind that on top of the genetics and the effects that they give, you have compounds called terpenes present in not just cannabis plants, present in most fruit, I think all fruit and vegetables. They're essentially like a flavoring compound, but they do have medicinal benefit as well, and they will have some effect on the high. So I'm sorry to have to tell you this is not simple necessarily. I'm probably making it sound more daunting than it is. Once you just get your head around it, it's not so bad, I promise. But as I said, do your own research. And when you find a strain that really works for you, research the genetics. Is it more indica or more sativa? And research the terpenes. And that should eventually, I mean, it really isn't that hard. After, even just a year of trying different things and making a note, you should emerge with a very good idea of, okay, so when I need to feel this way, I need to sleep, I need to feel less anxious, I need to look for this kind of plant, and when I want a burst of energy and creativity, I need that, and when I'm going to a party and I need to be social, etc., I need the other thing.
Do you think that people can accurately tell you how certain cannabis products will affect you?
Yeah, I think for someone like you, and we are similar in that respect, it is very difficult to predict because we are particularly sensitive to external energies, shall we say. I think all human beings are, just some people are more so than others. And when you are very sensitive in that way, then yeah, it's a bit of a lottery, really. I know exactly what kind of cannabis works for me, but on any given day, if maybe the sun has gone mad or the moon is in doing something that doesn't agree with me, that will affect me quite differently. So probably my least favorite question I get from people is, oh, if I smoke this, how will I feel? The most anyone can do is give you an idea of what that plant tends to do. I mean, this is broad brush strokes. If it is a very heavy sedating plant, then I'm not saying there's any danger of you kind of wanting to dance for hours if you imbibe some of that. No, it's not going to happen to that extent. I can very broadly tell someone what the effect is going to be. But this is why, as I said, your own research is so important, because the details of what is going to happen to you are really kind of unknowable. You can get the broad picture.
All right. So we're very, very thankful to have the Cannabis Witch on the podcast today. Unfortunately, she is a very busy witch. So if you have any questions, you're just going to have to leave a comment unless you actually have her information, because she's just a witch in the world and we don't know where she is. So if you have any questions for her or you want to hear more from her, please comment and let me know. Otherwise, I'd just love to reiterate that cannabis is a beautiful plant medicine that is available to be used topically, as well as eating it, as well as smoking it, even drinking it as a tea, maybe even putting it in your bath, because the Cannabis Witch makes bath salts too. So it's a beautiful medicine. And I would say if you're struggling with your mental health or just desiring to have a relationship with this plant, it's been calling you or anything like that, feel free to try it out and let me know any other questions you have. And I would love to have more people on the podcast to share this beautiful perspective. Thank you for tuning in.